Let's dive into the world of Scottish knitting, its history, patterns, and the designers shaping its future. We will explore how Scottish knitting has evolved and highlight some incredible designers, Rebecca Clow, Ysolda Teague, and Kate Davies, just to name a few, who are keeping the Scottish knitting traditions alive while adding their own modern creative twist. And there's even going to be a giveaway, which I'm going to talk more about later on in the video. Scotland is known for its breathtaking landscapes, rich history, and of course its deep-rooted knitting traditions. From intricate Fair Isle patterns to sturdy ganseys, Scottish knitwear is as beautiful as it is practical. But did you know that some of the most influential modern knitting designers also hail from Scotland? Of course, no video about Scottish knitting would be complete without mentioning Shetland. Shetland has its own incredible knitting heritage, from Fair Isle to Shetland lace, but this is a story that is deserving its own video, so stay tuned for a future episode of my Knitting Around the World series. Scottish knitting has a long and fascinating history with patterns that were both practical and also deeply symbolic. Let's start with some of the most iconic ones. Scottish fishermen needed warm, durable sweaters that could withstand the harsh North Sea weather. Enter the Gansey, a tightly knit wool sweater with distinct textured patterns. Each fishing community had its own motifs, almost like a signature, and the dense fabric provided warmth while repelling water. These historic pictures were kindly provided to me by the Wig Society Johnston collection. I'm going to link them in the description box below. They have a large collection of historic pictures if you're interested in diving deeper into the Scottish history. So those were some historic ganseys, and we will very shortly have a look at a modern version of this iconic design. I also wanted to mention the cable and Aran knitting style. Scotland's influence on cable knitting is often overlooked, but those textured stitches have been used in Scotland for centuries. We tend to often associate cable knitting with Ireland, but Scottish knitters have also developed a number of cable knitting patterns that are both practical and a work of art. And although tartans are a woven fabric and not knitted, a video about Scotland would not be complete without mentioning tartans, simply because they feel so distinctly Scottish. Each tartan is associated with a specific clan, region, or historical group, serving as a symbol of identity and heritage. While originally used for kilts and Highland dress, tartan patterns have influenced everything from fashion to knitting, where designers have adapted the iconic plaid designs into stranded colorwork techniques. Now let's talk about some incredible designers who are shaping the future of Scottish knitting while honoring its rich heritage. And I would like to start with Rebecca Clow, also known as the Creia Bea. Rebecca has a strong presence both on Instagram and on YouTube, where she also has her own channel. So if you have not done so already, I highly recommend that you check her out. Personally, I really enjoy it when designers have their own YouTube channel and share more about their design process and their inspiration in their videos, and I just think it's very fun to follow along on the development of a knitting pattern. The first knitting pattern of Rebecca Clow that I want to show you is called Staffin, and it just came out in January of 2025. Now this is a wonderful pattern because it includes both options for a sweater, a cardigan, and even a vest. Rebecca does that a lot in her patterns, that she offers more than one garment version, which I think is extremely generous of her. And what I also really like about her designs is the way she photographs the samples. You can often see more than one sample in different colors, and she also uses a number of different people from all ages and different body types to showcase her designs, which I think is very helpful. Staffing calls for a worsted weight yarn. She used the Rauma Fivel with a gauge of 16 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 8, which corresponds to 5 millimeters. The design comes in 13 different sizes, with finished bust measurements ranging from 90 up to 180 centimeters or 35.5 up to 70.75 inches. The design is recommended to be worn with 8 to 20 centimeters or 3 to 8 inches of positive ease. It is a top-down construction and a textured knit with ribbing and those diamond brocades, and it also features faux baubles. The cardigan and the sweater version feature a raglan construction. The vest is worked firstly by knitting the back panel, then picking up at the shoulders and working the front and then joining in the round. And the pattern comes both written and charted. The second design by Rebecca Clow that I wanted to show you is called Cargill, and it came out in September of 2022. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn held together with a silk mohair to create a DK weight gauge of 19 stitches and 35 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 4, which corresponds to 3.5 millimeters. This design comes in 11 sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 76 up to 171 centimeters or 30 up to 67 inches. It is recommended to be worn with 2 to 7 centimeters or 1 to 3 inches of positive ease. This design is knitted from the top down and has an all-over dip stitch pattern. First the back neck is cast on and then you do some shaping. Later on you join in the round and do some raglan increases to shape the yoke. You then split for the body and the sleeves, put the sleeves on hold and work the body, and afterwards you pick up the sleeves and work them without any decreases. I do have to admit I found it very hard to choose only 2 patterns from Rebecca because her portfolio is just so beautiful, and I highly recommend that you check her out. And in addition, I'm very happy to announce that Rebecca very kindly agreed to give away not 1 but 3 of her knitting patterns to 3 of you. So if you would like to knit one of Rebecca Clow's beautiful patterns, all you have to do is leave a comment down below and telling me which of her patterns you would like to knit. Please also add your Ravelry username so that Rebecca can gift you the pattern if you win this giveaway. I'm going to draw the winner on March 17th. Thank you so very much, Rebecca, for kindly agreeing to sponsor this giveaway. Let's move on to the next Scottish designer, and I would like to show you a couple of designs from Kate Davies. Kate Davies is another powerhouse in the Scottish knitting industry. She's known for blending tradition with modern fashion, but her designs still always evoke the feeling of honoring the Scottish knitting heritage. She's also written several books and even has her own yarn line. Her company is called KDD, and it was founded in 2010 after she had had a stroke at the age of 36, which had ended her academic career. I really love Kate Davies' design aesthetic, and I also think that she has some stunning photography, which I think is done by her husband. Her pattern portfolio is huge with more than 270 designs on Ravelry, so I highly recommend that you check her out. The first design of Kate Davies that I wanted to show you is called Wryit, and it was published in September of 2020. This beautiful classic cabled design is part of her book called 10 Years in the Making, but you can also purchase the pattern as an individual copy. It is knitted with a DK weight yarn. She used one of her own yarns, of course, and you can even purchase a kit for both the pattern and the yarn at her online store, which I'm going to link for you down below. The gauge required is 22 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and the needle size is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. The design comes in 6 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 81.5 up to 152.5 centimeters or 32 up to 60 inches. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease in the pattern. The design is knitted from the top down. It has those cable panels that are set against a ground of stockinette stitch on both the front and the back panel, and the sleeves are worked in moss stitch all throughout. Now, isn't the photography just stunning? I really like the fact that you often see glimpses of Scotland in the background of the pictures as well. So the second design of Kate Davies that I wanted to show you is called Smookie, and it came out in September of 2022. It is also knitted with yarn from her own yarn range with a DK weight yarn and a gauge of 22 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles that she used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. This design unfortunately only comes in 3 different sizes, with finished bust measurements ranging from 133 up to 177 centimeters or 52.5 up to 70 inches. It is recommended to be worn with 30.5 up to 50 centimeters of positive ease, which is quite a lot, and that corresponds to 12 to 20 inches. So this is a rather oversized pullover that is worked in the round from the bottom up and has a modified dropped sleeve construction. You have those twisted stitch panels that are centered on both the front and the back panel. What I really like about this design is the geometric look. I find it looks classic at the same time, but still with a modern twist, and I think it's just a very beautiful pattern. Let's move on to the next designer, and I would like to talk about Louisa Harding. Now, if you like elegant, feminine, romantic patterns, Louisa Harding is definitely a designer you should have a look at. Within the last couple of years, Louisa has been more focused on developing her yarn line than creating knitting patterns. She still does come out with new knitting patterns occasionally, but unfortunately that means that her patterns are a bit harder to get. Some are only available as part of booklets. You can still get them used on Amazon, for example, and some are even available in digital form. I'm going to link them for you down below, but you just have to do a bit of digging if you want to knit one of her beautiful designs. But the 2 designs that I am about to show you are both available as individual patterns. The first one is called Coraline, and this one came out in March of 2023. I have said it before and I'm saying it again, I really like garments that are striped, and this one is no exception. What I really like about that one is the addition of the lace in a contrast color on both the bottom hem, the sleeves, and also the neckline. And there is even a part of broken rib at the upper part of the yoke of the sweater, which I also quite like. She has used a worsted weight yarn from her own yarn range to knit this pattern with a gauge of 18 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 5 and a US 7, which corresponds to a 3.75 and a 4.5 millimeter needle. This design comes in 5 different sizes, with finished bust measurements ranging from 102 up to 135 centimeters, which corresponds to 40 up to 53 inches. Now, unfortunately, the size range, as you can see, is very limited here. The design is worked flat from the bottom up and then seamed. And the second design by Louisa Harding that I wanted to show you is called Cybele. And this one was published in November of 2019 and is also knitted with yarn from her own yarn line. This time she used a 100% cashmere yarn with a DK weight and a gauge of 22 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 5, 6, and 7, which corresponds to 3.75, 4, and 4.5 millimeters. This one comes in 4 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 84 up to 111 centimeters or 33 up to 43.5 inches. So unfortunately also a very limited size range, and there's also no information about the recommended ease, as is for her other design as well. This one is also knitted from the bottom up in pieces and then seamed. What I really like about this design is the elegant boat neck and the lace on both the bottom hem and the sleeve cuffs. Let's move on to the next designer now. Now, you can't talk about Scottish knitting without mentioning Alice Starmore. Alice Starmore is an expert in Fair Isle and Aran knitting, and she has published a number of books. Just to name a few, they are called Aran Knitting, the Celtic Collection, or To the Roses, for example. Alice Starmore's work is so intricate, and she's often drawing inspiration from both nature and Celtic arts, and she has even developed her own yarn line to go along with her beautiful design. As you can see here on this overview from her website, Alice Starmore is truly an artist. She has more than 300 designs in her portfolio on Ravelry, so as you can probably imagine, it was extremely difficult for me to select only 2 of her extraordinary designs. But let's have a look at the first one that I picked out, and this one is called Faroe, and it was originally published in one of her books that came out in 1993, and the book is called Fisherman's Sweaters, but it has now been updated and can be purchased as an individual pattern. And she even offers a kit of both the pattern and the yarn on her website, which again I'm going to link for you down in the description box. This one is knitted with DK weight yarn with a gauge of 25 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 3 and a US 5, which corresponds to 3.25 and 3.75 millimeter needles. Originally, this design came in only 2 sizes in the book, but it has since been expanded to 6 sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 95 up to 132 centimeters or 37.5 up to 52 inches. Starmore talks about her inspiration and design process of this particular design on the pattern page, and I would like to read that to you now. She says, I took my original inspiration for Faroe from the little patterns I saw on the garments worn by Faroese fishermen who occasionally came ashore in my hometown of Stornoway. The garments they wore featured one small and simple repeated pattern, usually worked in a dark color on pale background, and though the patterns were very basic, they invariably made a bold impact. For my design, I created several simple patterns and arranged them in vertical panels. Then I reversed the traditional 2-color scheme so that the main color is the darker shade and the contrast color is the pale shade. I designed the garment in the Gansey style, knitted in the round with diamond-shaped underarm gussets, which I also decorated with patterns. The sleeves are knitted up from the armholes and worked in the round to the cuffs, so the garment is entirely seamless. Since it is also a stranded color design, it features steeks at the armholes and neck, and so there is a broad range of techniques to practice whilst knitting. And the second design that I would like to show you is from her book Tudor Roses. Now this book came out in 2013 and it features 14 different designs, all inspired by women from the Tudor dynasty. Starmore created this book in collaboration with her daughter Jade, who is a photographer, writer, stylist, and I think even an illustrator. I highly recommend that you have a look at the full Tudor Roses collection because there are so many beautiful patterns to be discovered there. The one that I have picked out to show you is called Elizabeth I. This pattern is knitted with a fingering weight yarn from Starmore's own yarn range. The gauge is 27 stitches and 40 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2 and a US 2.5, which corresponds to 2.75 and 3 millimeter needles. The design comes in 3 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 94 up to 106 centimeters or 37 up to 41.75 inches. Now, unfortunately, this is another pattern with a very limited size range and there is also no information about the recommended ease. The design is knitted in 4 pieces and then seamed together later on. It includes short row shaping at the bottom of all of the 4 pieces and also waist shaping. The front and the back of the sweater are identical and include a textured design in this triangular shaped piece at the neckline. And it also has these elegant bell sleeves. In case you don't know, Elizabeth I was the last monarch of the House of Tudor to rule. She was Queen of England and Ireland from 1558 until 1603 when she died. You might be familiar with King Henry VIII, and Elizabeth I was one of his daughters. Personally, I think that the House of Tudor is a very fascinating part of history. If you would like to dive deeper into this topic, I can highly recommend the books of Philippa Gregory. She has written a whole series featuring different women of the House of Tudor, which I'm going to link for you down below. But let's get back to the contemporary Scottish knitwear designers now. Another very big name in the knitting industry is Ysolda Teague. Ysolda also has a huge portfolio on Ravelry with more than 200 patterns available, and I am actually wearing one of her designs today. This sweater is called Strokkur and it came out in July of 2013. Now this is not a Scottish inspired design, but with this design Ysolda was inspired by the traditional Icelandic lopapeysa sweaters, so the round yoke colorwork sweaters. Now this is the very first sweater I ever knitted and I still cannot believe how well it turned out. I used the recommended yarn, which is Letlopi by Istex, which is an Icelandic yarn company, and this is a very rustic yarn. The gauge is 18 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 7, which corresponds to 4.5 millimeter needles, and this design comes in 12 different sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 30¼ up to 59½ inches or 77 up to 151 centimeters. This design is knitted from the bottom up in the round. It includes waist shaping and also short rows. Since this pattern only includes just a couple of rows of colorwork, I can highly recommend this design even if you have never knitted colorwork before and even if you have never knitted a sweater before. That's just a wonderful pattern to start with. And the second design by Ysolda Teague that I wanted to show you is this pair of mitts, which are called Mīlēt, I think. Mīlēt. It means to love or to feel love, and it came out in November of 2017. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 34 stitches and 36 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 1.5 and a US 2.5, which correspond to 2.5 and 3 millimeter needles. The finished measurements are 9 inches or 23 centimeters at the circumference of the palm, and the finished length with the folded cuffs is 9½ inches or 24 centimeters. Those stranded colorwork mittens with the fold over cuffs feature stitch patterns that are inspired by traditional colorwork both from Norway, Estonia and also Latvia. It is knitted with 3 different colors. You work ribbing on the inside of the cuffs for a snug fit that will keep your hands nice and warm during those cold winters or snows. The tops are completed with rounded shaping in a star or snowflake design that is inspired by the tops of Faroe Thames. And a miniature version is also worked on the thumbs. Sorry if my background looks somewhat different. My battery just died, so I had to start over. What I wanted to say is that Mīlēt is a Latvian name, and I wanted to quickly mention that I have also created a video about Latvian knitting patterns and designers, which I highly recommend that you check out next if you haven't done so already. And I also wanted to remind you about the giveaway, so if you would like to win one of Rebecca Clow's patterns, please leave a comment down below letting me know which of Rebecca Clow's patterns you would like to knit, and also add your Ravelry username. That's it. Until next time, happy making. Bye guys!